This could have been dismissed as the isolated act of a disturbed individual, but it wasn't. Within a week, something truly terrifying began to happen. Dozens of other people joined her. Men, women, and even children were suddenly seized by the same uncontrollable compulsion. They poured into the streets, their bodies writhing in a macabre, synchronized madness. The city of Strasbourg was waking up to a living nightmare. Within a month, the number of dancers had swelled to over 400. The scene was apocalyptic. The streets were filled with a writhing mass of people, their faces contorted in a mixture of agony and ecstasy. They danced tirelessly, day and night, their feet raw and bleeding, their clothes tattered. The constant, rhythmic stomping on the cobblestones became the city's horrifying soundtrack. They were trapped in a nonstop frenzy, a dance marathon from which there was no escape. They danced until their bodies gave out, until they suffered heart attacks, strokes, or simply dropped dead from pure physical exhaustion. The city's leaders were in a state of absolute panic. What was this? A disease? A curse? They turned to the physicians of the time, who, lacking any modern medical understanding, came up with a peculiar diagnosis: hot blood. They believed the dancers' blood had overheated, causing this feverish mania. Their proposed cure was even more bizarre, and, as it turned out, catastrophically wrong. The doctors advised the city council that the victims simply needed to dance it out. They believed that if they were allowed to dance continuously, the fever would break and they would be cured. Following this fatal advice, the authorities took a series of bewildering steps. They cleared out large public spaces, including the grain market and the horse market, to create designated dancing areas. They even went so far as to construct a massive wooden stage in the middle of the city. And to top it all off, they hired professional musicians, pipers, and drummers to provide a steady beat, believing that music would help the dancers burn off their frenetic energy more efficiently. You can probably guess what happened next. The plan backfired spectacularly. The introduction of music didn't cure anyone. It had the opposite effect. The relentless, driving rhythms seemed to fuel the hysteria. The sight of the stage and the festive atmosphere drew even more people in. Some onlookers, perhaps susceptible to the mass psychological state, were pulled into the frenzy themselves. The dancing grew more wild, more intense. The crowds became more frantic, and the death toll began to climb. People were collapsing and dying right there on the dance floor, sometimes at a rate of up to 15 people per day. The city that was trying to heal its citizens was now actively facilitating their deaths. Strasbourg had become a dance party of the damned. As the death count rose, desperation set in. The hot blood theory was abandoned. The city's leaders, now terrified, turned to a more supernatural explanation. The priests and clergy were brought in. They declared that the dancing plague was the work of a Saint Vitus, who was known to inflict curses of uncontrollable dancing upon sinners. The cure, they claimed, was repentance. The stage was torn down, the musicians were dismissed, and public dancing was banned. The remaining dancers were rounded up, put into wagons, and taken to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, high in the Vosges mountains. The last few individuals finally ceased their convulsions, their bodies broken, their minds scarred. By early September, the dancing plague of 1518 was over. The nightmare had ended. But the question has haunted us for 500 years. What on earth actually happened? To this day, there is no definitive answer, only theories, each more fascinating than the last. Let's explore the most prominent theory: mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria. The people of Strasbourg in 1518 were living under immense psychological pressure. They had endured a series of brutal famines, and poverty was rampant. The theory goes that this perfect storm of stress, malnutrition, and belief in supernatural curses created a fertile ground for a psychological contagion. The sight of Frau Troffea dancing might have acted as a trigger, planting a powerful suggestion in the minds of a vulnerable population. In a collective trance-like state, their psychological distress manifested physically as uncontrollable dancing. It was a shared delusion, a social contagion that spread like wildfire. But what if it wasn't just in their heads? Another compelling theory points to a physical cause: ergotism. Ergot is a type of fungus that grows on damp rye, a staple grain at the time. When consumed, this fungus can cause a condition known as St. Anthony's fire. Ergot contains psychoactive chemicals that are structurally similar to LSD. Symptoms of ergot poisoning include muscle spasms, convulsions, hallucinations, and a sense of delirium. Could it be that the people of Strasbourg had eaten contaminated bread, and the dancing was actually a mass poisoning event? A city-wide bad trip that turned deadly. This theory neatly explains the physical symptoms: the twitching, the convulsions. However, it has its own problems. While ergotism causes spasms, it doesn't typically manifest as coordinated, day-long dancing. Also, it's strange that a mass poisoning would affect people so sporadically over a period of weeks, rather than hitting everyone who ate the bread at once. Then there are the more fringe theories. Some historians have suggested that the dancing plague might have been a remnant of an ancient pagan ritual. Perhaps it was a secret religious sect whose ritual got out of hand, or was misinterpreted by outsiders as a sickness. In this view, the dancing was intentional, at least at first, a form of ecstatic religious expression that spiraled into a deadly obsession. This is hard to prove, as any such group would have been secretive due to persecution by the church. And of course, we can't ignore the possibility that the historical records themselves might be exaggerated. Maybe it wasn't 400 people. Maybe it was a few dozen. Maybe the deaths were from pre-existing conditions, exacerbated by the dancing. But even with potential exaggeration, the documents from the time city council notes, sermons, doctors' reports all agree that something unprecedented and terrifying took place. They all describe a plague of compulsive dancing. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most bizarre and unsettling chapters. A moment in time when the line between mind and body, between reality and nightmare, completely dissolved. Was it a psychological breakdown on a massive scale? A case of accidental mass poisoning? A religious ritual gone horribly wrong? Or something else entirely? Something that defies our modern understanding? The truth is, we may never know for sure. The story of Strasbourg serves as a chilling reminder of the power of the human mind, the fragility of society, and the terrifying mysteries that still lie buried in the pages of history. What do you think happened? Let me know your theories down in the comments. This is one of those stories that really sticks with you. Thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the weird and unexplained, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. See you next time.